first Seek Sustainable Live talk show of this year. Happy Year of the Bunny. Thank you so much for joining, Alex.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
It's awesome to have you here. So today we have Alex Brown, all the way in Scotland today, right, Alex?
Yeah, I might in.
Yeah, you're in Glasgow, right? Can you hear? Okay.
Sorry, I think there might be a little bit of feedback.
Oh,
Um,
really? Okay.
yeah, possibly.
It's not, I don't
Um,
hear any feedback on my side.
yeah,
If you're okay,
that's unusual.
maybe
Sorry.
if you turn the volume down, maybe for your earphones, or it sounds okay on my
Possibly,
side.
yeah. Sorry about this. It's
No,
kind of
no
looping
problem.
back to me. Uh,
Yeah, a delay. Sometimes that happens.
yeah. Not sure.
Let me show the website. So today we're talking with Alex Brown, who works as assistant marketing assistant for Tokyoesque. I want to keep calling it Japan-esque, but it's called Tokyoesque. And this is their web page. And they're based in the UK and Netherlands, I believe. And they're trying to help businesses in Europe who are interested in entering the Japanese market. So they do Japanese market industry research, market research. They connect with key important businesses and people to make the right connections in Japan. And they also help businesses from other countries localize in the Japanese market. Alex, how you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. Sorry about these audio issues. I'm still getting a continuing loop.
Oh
Um,
no. Oh, that's
yeah,
too
it's a
bad.
little bit hard to hear what you're saying at the moment.
Okay.
Um, yeah, apologies.
No problem. Alex, how about if you give us a little introduction about yourself? You lived in Japan for a while. You said you were working and studying in Kyoto. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, my name is Alex Byrne, as everyone knows. My background is in kind of Japanese studies, and a little bit of linguistics. So I studied a 4-year master's at the University of Edinburgh, and I spent 1 year of that living in Kyoto and studying at Dojichi University. And I was lucky enough to be able to work at a traditional ryokan in Kyoto called Izuyasu, where I kind of helped out with well, all round sort of things like preparation of food, and yeah, there it is. And kind of just general front of house duties, and kind of kitchen duties. But yeah, then kind of since then, I had a small stint as a freelance manga translator, which I'm kind of trying to keep up as I go. And in May of 2022, I joined Tokyoesque, and now we're here today.
Great. That's awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about Natalie Meyer, the CEO and founder, and why she started Tokyoesque? It sounds like she grew up in Silicon Valley in the States. She lived in London. She knew Japan very well. Can you tell us a little bit about how she felt Tokyoesque was filling a gap?
Um, Sorry, I couldn't quite hear you so well because of the feedback. If you don't
So,
mind.
could you tell us a little bit about Tokyoesque? Just give us an overview.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, sorry, with the founder Natalie Meyer. Natalie, she has quite kind of a very international background. As you said, she grew up in Silicon Valley, and then she studied in Washington, but then also in yep, as you can see, yeah. She was educated in Washington, Tokyo, and London, doing her master's. in London, and yeah, basically it's this kind of sense of cultural neutrality, as it's put there, that I think kind of makes up Tokyoesque's core. Because we're a very kind of multicultural, international team. We're kind of based all over, really, in Tokyo and, well, sorry, not Tokyo, but Osaka, London, and in Amsterdam, and also up in Scotland, oddly enough. Um, but yeah, and I think sort of what you could say the kickoff point, or the origin even for Natalie's decision to make Tokyoesque, is she found herself kind of being approached by people who were needing kind of very kind of global knowledge. You know, they were needing sort of very kind of region specific knowledge in like Japan and in Europe. And basically, that's kind of Tokyoesque's sort of mission to kind of provide this kind of like global connection and sort of, yeah, globalized knowledge, really. Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to talk about a few of the examples in a little bit of some of the businesses that you've helped to get that localized and connectivity and market research to help them expand their businesses or to enter the Japanese market. In general, what would you say is one of the big hurdles for international businesses trying to enter Japan's market?
Well, I think obviously there are many things, but I think a lack of cultural knowledge is something that's definitely easily overlooked. Because fundamentally, you can kind of know how things work in one country, or how you can know how consumers maybe operate in one country, or even in an area of a country. Um, but things need to be localized as different things resonate with different consumers. Um, so yeah, it's kind of it's a common pitfall for companies to try and kind of replicate the success that they've had in one country, um, by using essentially the same strategy in another, which obviously won't kind of resonate in the same way with another audience. Yeah, because of all the kind of cultural differences and everything involved. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not just a language problem,
Oh,
is
absolutely
it?
not. Yeah.
It's much more about culture and being able to communicate. Not even just translation is going to work, right?
Yeah.
You really have to find ways to localize and connect with the local people in a way that works for them and how they need to accept the message, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's something which I learned the importance of localization, and essentially the difference between localization and translation, um, in university. But it really kind of got drilled into me when I was doing my manga translation job, because essentially just translating isn't, or just translating text and such isn't enough. You need to translate cultural concepts. That's kind of what I consider localization to be, not just cultural concepts, but um, yeah, adapting how you convey things, or kind of translating like the concepts that you want to convey to people, the image, or maybe how you want to get like which reaction out of people. Yeah, so I think kind of the manga translations been really informative, I think, for me in coming into Tokyoesque, because yeah, it's kind of, it's all localization, really. It's kind of a similar vein.
That was one of the examples I thought was so interesting on the Tokyoesque website is about how anime is used in advertising
Mm.
in one of your innovative insight articles. working in the manga anime industry, you might have a insight on that.
Yeah, yeah. I found this really interesting as well. Kind of this Gucci advert using Miley Cyrus in kind of a kind of manga slash anime type style to appeal better to Japanese consumers. Yeah, I mean because while anime and manga and such are becoming like significantly more popular, particularly among the younger generation in the West. Um, yeah, essentially, you you need to make what you're kind of trying to convey to people resonate with them and actually speak to them and kind of garner their interest. So this was a great way, I think, in particular, of kind of grabbing people. Although Gucci obviously has a lot of standing popularity in Japan anyway. I think it would be very novel for Japanese consumers to see this foreign brand kind of making that effort to connect with them and kind of speak to them directly. Yeah. Mm.
That was such an interesting example, and I'd never thought of that. Like, you often see that with Japanese brands, but why not with foreign brands as well who are trying to enter the market?
Yeah.
And like you said, kind of show that you respect the local anime or manga culture by using that genre as a way to do your PR and advertising and kind of awareness campaign as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Because I mean, that kind of localization or localization in general helps businesses speak to their kind of foreign potential consumer base. And if you can't speak to your consumer base, then you're not going to connect with them and you're not really going to be able to thrive so much. But yeah, so it's through strategies like that, I think, that you can really start to what say not that Gucci needs to be ingrained, but you can really start to kind of ingrain yourself in a new market and really get some positive engagement from people. Mm.
Yeah. Now, you also do consulting and helping Japanese companies also get perspective in the UK or outside of Japan. There was an interesting example that you had on your website about Mitsui Fudosan, so a real estate company in Japan, thinking about future developments, maybe in Tokyo in the future. So they wanted you to do some research in the UK in different areas where they have a good social connectivity, it sounded like.
Yeah.
Can you talk about this project a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So, on this particular one, we did on the ground research. One of the benefits of being quite, quite a what's we spread around company. We have people based in lots of different locales. So, some of our people in London were able to go and do kind of on the ground research, kind of taking pictures and really checking out these sort of like interesting new developments in London, specifically with a mind to sustainability and I think kind of wellness in general, because there's a lot of we are seeing a lot of intrigue from Japanese clients like Mitsui Fudosan surrounding kind of yeah interesting like foreign sustainable development and also kind of wellness solutions. Um, so yeah, so in that case, for example, it's kind of like we looked at certain spaces which functioned basically to on the side of wellness to get people involved with their communities, um, kind of actually get them out and kind of just kind of help essentially initiatives that help to kind of revitalize slash give some energy to the community, and then also at the same time the developments themselves have are generally ones with kind of very good sort of So sorry. What's it called? How can I possibly forgot this term? But circle of economy. Eh?
Circular economy.
Circular
Yeah,
economy.
yeah.
I'm so sorry. How can I possibly have forgotten that? But yeah, yeah, they have a kind of circular economy going. So yeah, I mean, my kind of thinking on this is maybe the reason that we're seeing so much kind of added interest from Japanese clients, kind of Japanese developers like this, specifically surrounding wellness and sustainability, is because we actually have this kind of going. I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but going the other way as well, we have companies in Europe looking to Japan for knowledge of how they can improve their own solutions. But I think kind of Japanese companies are growingly looking to gain kind of inspiration or knowledge of what kind of global like awareness. One of our taglines, globally around caring.
I thought it might be connected to the development of smart cities
Yeah.
in Japan, because there's Panasonic, there's Toyota,
Hmm.
there's a lot of big money and big investment in time and energy and talent from abroad in developing these cities of the future. And so I thought that might be a really interesting reason some real estate developers or big companies in Japan are looking at examples of these communities which are including people who are elderly, for example, or who are creating good infrastructure for younger people.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a much easier place to live if you want to use a bicycle, right?
Hmm.
You guys are also set up in the Netherlands. So when we're talking about bicycle culture, Japan has a lot to learn from the Netherlands, like all of us around the world,
Yeah.
about how to create a good bicycle infrastructure, that kind of thing, right?
Mm. Yeah. We have a wee comment. It's like an important research for evaluating values of investment by like the perspective of sustainability. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, yeah, like sustainability obviously isn't an issue that the world can afford to ignore. But at the same time, of course, companies are seeking like profitability because if you want something to be like financially sustainable as well as sustainable for the planet, so that it can continue to do good, you need to kind of really consider, okay, what are other people doing? Kind of what kind of solutions are other countries putting in. But yeah, I'm so sorry. As you were saying there, Joy, what was your question again? I'm so sorry.
No, no, that's fine. That perfectly fits in well because I think one of the things that Natalie often talks about is globalization
Mm,
and the need for us all to consider ourselves global citizens. Whether we're in Japan, we're in UK, whether we're in Netherlands, right?
mm,
We all have things to learn from each other. Definitely.
absolutely. Sorry, I've just remembered you were saying about specifically about like bicycle infrastructure. So for in another report we did for a big kind of Japanese real estate developer, we were specifically looking at kind of similar to the Mitsui Fudosan. We were looking at developments which have changed the way in which, say, people interact with their environments and maybe have a kind of sustainable edge to them and are drawing the kind of younger generation. And specifically in Camden, you have to forgive me. I've managed to forget the name of the specific development. But yeah, there was a development in which basically, um, um, or sorry, multiple developments really. But Camden has turned into like one of the most kind of like bike friendly places in the UK, possibly the most bike friendly place. Because basically with the coming of the COVID-19 pandemic, there's been a lot of change to London infrastructure, specifically in a good direction for sustainability. Because, forgive me for going into details a wee bit here, but due to COVID restrictions on kind of distancing, they weren't able to kind of, or they had to restrict essentially the number of people that could go on the subways. So they started to look to other solutions, and even considering, what, say, buses, still too packed. So there was a lot of push for kind of like rental bikes and free use bikes. And resultantly, we've had this kind of explosion of public, like cyclable spaces, kind of new bike lanes, and actually also like pedestrian areas as well, kind of widening of pathways. So I think yeah, the coronavirus pandemic has done a lot to essentially make cities more walkable, and I think that's very connected to like human wellness.
Absolutely. Livability and easy for visitors as well as residents
Mm,
is a huge asset for communities. That's one of the things I love about being in Hiroshima. It's such an easy city to walk around. We also have great public transport.
mm,
And I think most of Japan is really well connected in the cities, but a lot of the rural areas do lack public transport. But there's a lot of entrepreneurs who are setting up, like bicycle tours or hiking tours. There's a lot of innovation there as well.
mm,
It's like we said before, there's so much you can learn from all over the place and apply it to Japan or apply ideas from Japan to other places.
yeah.
One of my favorite examples in Tokyo is in Ginza. They closed down the main street for like maybe it's every Sunday. I want to say it's every Sunday, but they pedestrianized that main shopping street area, and they let people sit in the middle of the street on tables and enjoy the big open space between the sides of the street. And it really encourages people to go and enjoy that area without all the cars going through.
Yeah,
And I think that's one of the ideas we could apply all over Japan, if not in the UK and other places as well, right?
absolutely. Sorry. I think yeah, the UK, from what I've seen, has had a fair boom in like pedestrianization of cities. Has even quite close to home in Glasgow. The main George Square, like certain kind of streets going along it have been cut off and kind of just open to pedestrians. And as a result, just there are a lot more people out and interacting with those spaces. And it just encourages people to, I think this is particularly important in the wake of, COVID, when people were stuck at home and not able to, maybe communicate with others as much. It's great to see spaces kind of facilitating more human interaction and more actually kind of getting out and talking to people and, being in the city, which of course is good for business in terms of footfall as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's good for businesses. People feel more comfortable if there's more open spaces, less stress if you're not crowded all the time,
Yeah.
if you don't have to use crowded buses and trains as well, right?
Hmm.
Let's talk about some of the interesting examples of British companies or European companies that you have helped to localize as they went into the Japanese market. I was really interested in the company Huel that you helped to localize in Japan's market, because this is one of the exciting things that I'm seeing from the international travelers who are coming to Japan as well. Is a lot more international travelers are bringing in demand for sustainable products and services.
Hmm.
And one of them bringing demand is plant based. So I was really excited to see that Huel is a sports kind of health food company. Everything is completely plant based.
Hmm.
And although their Japanese site at the moment, it's only the shakes that they have. But you can see on their Japanese site that they're talking about sustainability. They're talking about how their ingredients are more sustainable.
Hmm.
They're talking about health and plant-based. A lot of people still have the image that you have to eat meat if you're going to be strong and fit, right?
Mm.
They're also talking about vegan, so you get the feeling that a lot of the more sustainable minded companies who are already doing products which are plant based or more sustainable focused, they have a good appeal in Japan if they can kind of leverage it or communicate it in the right way. And that's where you guys can help, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It's as you say, kind of like leveraging it and communicating it in the right way, because there's a lot of buzz around sustainability in Japan. Specifically, the younger generation are getting more and more kind of involved with it. They're more educated on it as well, with kind of SDGs and stuff and such being taught in high schools and everything. Um, so yeah, essentially through our work, we've been providing kind of localization in terms of like website design and packaging, and then also we've been kind of trying to help them understand Japanese consumer attitudes towards like say recycling and other kind of circular economy related issues. But yeah, I think absolutely it's very key for them to keep interacting with, or sorry, keep becoming kind of more aware of how to best speak to your Japanese audience. Yeah, because I think Japan is definitely very kind of primed to interact with that sort of conversation. They are interested in that conversation. You just need to find the right angle. Mm.
Yeah. But it is a very frustrating place for people to live and visit if they're trying to be plant-based at the moment. So that's where the imports of international brands, which are cool and which are already established abroad, they can really help to accelerate
Mhm.
the changes that we see in Japan as well, which is very positive.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're definitely right. Yeah, because I suppose currently when I think of vegan food in Japan, I think like, shojin yori, like the kind of Buddhist type, which I
Yeah.
admit I do very much like.
You were in Kyoto. You were in
And
Kyoto.
I had some
But it
shojin
is
yori.
it is very hard to get, and even in Kyoto, like you did this great article on Tokyoesque
Hmm.
about vegetarianism and veganism in Japan, why vegan products should be in Japan now, and how there is real potential for demand, I think, in Japan. And I think you guys were really on point there.
Hmm.
Um, it is a challenge, and I keep meeting Japanese people as well as international people who are searching for it, and it's just not really available as easily as it should be now.
Yeah.
I think we expected the 2020 Olympics was going to be a big boom because everybody was going to come, but because of COVID and not that many people actually could come, it wasn't the big change that we expected. But I feel that 2023 is gonna, now that the gates are open,
Yeah.
we're seeing more international travelers. We're going to see more brands offering more plant-based, vegetarian, vegan options. We have some big chains that are starting to do it in Japan as well. But yeah, there's still a bit of a gap in terms of the options that you have abroad and the options when you come to Japan. That's for sure.
I think you're absolutely right there. Sorry. Um, especially kind of especially with when you mentioned that obviously there are lots of like Japanese people for whom this is a real kind of pain point, not being able to find the vegan products that they need, or even sometimes vegetarian alternatives. So it's definitely not it's not just a foreigners in Japan kind of thing, or just a kind of accommodating tourist type thing. Although that kind of foreign audience can definitely help to accelerate things. Um, because yeah,
Isn't that funny? Because I'm American. For years in Japan, people be like, "Oh, you're American. Here's our burger," or "Oh, we have steak," and you'd be like, "No, I'm a vegetarian." So then you have this big gap in now as a international visitor, they're like, "Oh, do you want to see the vegetarian menu?"
hmm,
I was like, "Yes, good change. That's a good change."
that's
One other thing that I really like about Huel before we move on is their branding. They're using reusable straws. They're
mm,
using, like sometimes you'll see a vegan, vegetarian, or more sustainable product in Japan, but they're still in plastic, right? Or there's just something not quite sustainable about what kind of messaging they're doing.
yeah,
But when you look at Huel's social media, yeah, they're not even pointing it out. They're just using reusable straws. They're using reusable things.
yeah,
They're using plant-based things. It's just part of it's embedded
mm,
in their brand. And I'm excited to see how you guys help them translate that and adapt that to attract the Japanese market.
mm.
That'll be cool.
I think what you're saying there, sorry about about Huel kind of just using it or just using kind of fully sustainable like materials and such, um just like it's like it's nothing, like it's completely a given, is great because I think Japanese consumers would kind of appreciate that sort of what say like wholesomeness of the brand, of the kind of brand image. um it's a kind of, yeah, it's just very sort of, I don't know, I think it lends them legitimacy to be so consistent, and I think that'll be a real strength for them.
Yeah. Let's talk about pufferfish, which is based in Scotland, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounded like on your website they were having trouble really getting traction in the Japanese market. And you were able to help them connect with the right kind of organizations so that they could really start to get support for their products. It sounds like they do educational products, displays, and finding the right kind of museum, for example, was probably difficult.
Mm.
So using a company like yours, which helps them connect and localize, must have really been an asset for them. Can you say anything about this one?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so that's kind of, that's an example of our connect stage. So so at Tokyoesque, we kind of advocate for not just the three-step process, but a kind of circular three-step process of market research, connecting, and then localization. So the connect stage is all about kind of building these partnerships and connections, as is in the word, to kind of really get you sort of rooted and established in your target market. And I think that's what we were able to really deliver for pufferfish, kind of giving or helping, well, not sorry, kind of finding them those connections and maybe that distribution, which is so hard to find if you're a foreign company trying to navigate an unknown market, often without actually maybe being there in person or anything like that. So I think that's sort of one of the strengths that we provided them.
Yeah, great. I'm sure they really appreciated that. And I would love to see them connected to museums like the Hiroshima Peace Memorial
Mhm.
Museum. There's a lot of interactive displays
Yeah.
that they have connecting kids. A lot of kids visit the museum to learn about the nuclear attack on Hiroshima in 1945, but also more present day information like where is radiation happening right now around the world? Where are the nuclear arms threats around the world? Those kinds of things.
Mhm.
It seems like Pufferfish does those kinds of interactive educational displays. So I'd love for you to connect them to us in Hiroshima. See if we can get them in the museum there.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. Yeah, I'm not sure how relevant it is to mention this just now, but I've been to Hiroshima. I did a little traveling while I was in Japan, and yeah, it was unlike anything I'd sort of ever seen. Really, kind of the just the gravity of everything. I think the um what they have what they have existing is absolutely wonderful. But as you say, it would be great to have kind of more maybe interactive displays that like the younger generation could get involved in, and I suppose it would allow for, as you said, like kind of these maybe like live updates, or well, not live updates, but kind of changing information for like a changing world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, the nuclear threat is still out there around the world, right? And so Hiroshima has that great role of being the city of peace and trying to support anti-nuclear movements around the world. So yeah, working with international organizations to make things more interactive, especially for younger generation, that could be really exciting.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It would be really meaningful as well. Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad that you visited Hiroshima. I hope you didn't just go to Peace Park or just go to Miyajima. So that's something that I'm always trying to support and promote is please stay longer. There's lots to see in Hiroshima. It's not just the Peace Park and Miyajima.
Hmm.
We have a lot more here to see and enjoy.
Yeah,
Definitely spend more time.
yeah, because if I'm right, sorry, I've seen some of your prior episodes, but am I right in thinking you're sort of an advocate for seeing the kind of the road less traveled in Japan, these sort of like um spots which aren't necessarily massively famous, but really give you a sense of the culture you're in and the people. Because I think that's kind of a shared passion, and because that's what I tried to do when I was traveling in Japan. What I always find when I'm traveling is I'm more interested in the people than I am the maybe monuments. Um, yeah, so I think obviously it's so worthwhile to go and see the Peace Park. Absolutely, so that's definitely worth it. But I think it's great to kind of I say I went to Fukuoka. My best experience was just chatting with fishermen by the river. I think
That's
these
awesome.
Yeah, I think these little things are kind of
Oh, absolutely. And those are the memories, those are the stories that people want to experience and those are the stories they're going to tell when they leave Japan.
mm,
It's not it's not usually seeing the big top sites that everybody has to see and it's on your bucket list and you have to take a photo. It's really having those more personal connections
yeah.
in Japan. And I'm sure you find that with the businesses that you help as well
Hmm.
is to set up their business trip so that they really can connect to the right people and really make meaningful connections. It's not just seeing the business that's going to make their product or sell their product. It's really about setting up those good personal relationships, I imagine, right?
Yeah, yeah. Cause of course it's not enough to just kind of let's say guide someone around. What we aim to do is like foster like real understanding. Again, it's that kind of like awareness. Yeah. It's actually the kind of creation of these like international connections. Yeah, which allows people to kind of like build on knowledge from all over the world and better improve what they have going at home, or improve their ventures abroad. But
Yeah, absolutely. And another example, which is connected to that, is you helped the Irish Food Board to learn a bit more about Japan's gin and spirits industry because they wanted to do a project there. And so, setting up, I imagine, going to different distilleries around Japan, making the right connections for their business trip as they were doing kind of a study tour, study and connection tour.
Yeah.
And I was interested in that particularly because did you know Hiroshima has quite a famous gin now?
Ooh, I've heard of that. What's the name again?
Yeah, it's Sakarao, I
Sakurao.
believe. And I'm often getting asked about it by visitors because it's very hard to get. And apparently, you can only buy it in Hiroshima, is what I've heard. So if you go to any liquor shop in Hiroshima, you can definitely get it.
Mm.
But yeah, it's won some international awards, so that's nice. We of course have a very famous sake industry for many many
Oh
years.
yeah.
We have great local craft beer, but this is nice to have another local industry, local product, which is quite well known now and quite high quality. That's always nice when that happens.
Yeah, sort of the food and drink industry is kind of one of our what's say specializations. It's sort of one of the industries that we interact with quite a lot. So I don't know, like it's really a thrill for me when I see like Japanese products, which say what like 5 years ago or 8 years ago I just would have never seen in Scotland. It's a thrill for me when I see them kind of on the shelves somewhere. Yeah, like and the Japanese like drinks industry is doing amazing in terms of international expansion. But specifically with the Irish Food Board, yeah, we helped organize like visits to various kind of locations across like across Japan, and yeah, organized yeah those kind of business trips, which was absolutely great. Kind of yeah, because obviously we could, we were able to take care of the difficult things, which kind of as I was saying before, which when it's in a foreign country, you may not know how to arrange certain things, you may not know how to kind of get yourself rooted, but we were able to kind of get them there. Um, Show them around and kind of help them build connections with the people there so that they can learn what they need to learn. Mm.
Yeah. I know it sounds strange to be promoting alcohol as a sustainability focused show, but the local sake industry, these local industries, they support so many traditional tradespeople.
Mm-hmm.
They support so many local farmers.
Yeah.
Usually they're set up in rural locations. So they're keeping the rural towns and areas alive. They're employing a lot of people outside of the cities.
Mm.
So there are a lot of features of sustainability, definitely, for all of these
Yeah,
local industries.
I think there's something to be said about the circular economy kind of in how like byproducts of sake are used as well. There's a particular company called Fermentation, which I just a personal thing I find really interesting. And yeah, it's as you see on our article, yeah. And yeah, they kind of work with kind of rice products, but I believe also kind of sake waste products to create their products, which are kind of like organic, sustainable, and everything like that. And I just find that really interesting. I think Japan has a good culture of reusing, which I think lends itself, or not well reusing, but also finding use for things that can be considered useless, which I think really lends itself to sustainability. Yeah, and actually sustainable
Definitely.
recycling.
I love that example. I had queued that up. I wanted to talk about that. That was perfect. Because they're using food waste, right? They're using the waste products of the rice industry, of the
Mhm.
sake industry to make beauty products.
Yeah.
And it's such a beautiful example of, and like you said, there is that underlying core concept of motainai, or don't waste, or so even though the day to day you do see a lot of waste in Japan, like anywhere around the world, but if you talk to people about it, if you use those right cultural connections, you can really communicate what you're talking about and people get it. because there is that core belief
Yeah.
going back generations about motainai and omotenashi and good hospitality, don't waste. These are things people understand, right?
Yeah, it's I can't remember specifically which governor it was, but I think it was in Tokyo. But I remember there was a push for um I believe there's something kind of along this line in the article just up there, but there's a push for kind of reusing clothes, kind of in a way inspired by the way in which people would wear like traditional kimono in the past. So it's my understanding it was kind of people in say the Edo period, so what's the 1700s type thing, would uh, kind of as the kimono would kind of deteriorate, they'd use every last scrap of it for different things. So a certain part which say tears off or something you'd use as like underwear or something. So it's kind of constantly reusing, and I think that's the kind of at least that's an inspiration for some of these kind of like circular economy models, like fashion initiatives. Like there's one in the article there where you basically can send in older clothes and they'll well not just rework but kind of reprocess them into new ones. Yeah, kind of keep the material in circulation. Mm,
Yeah, that's really cool. I had an interview with a woman who's nicknamed Kimono Sheila,
mm,
and she was advocating in modern life wearing kimono all the time.
mm,
She said it's fantastic. You never have to do any washing because the kimono doesn't need to be washed all the time like your clothes do. So you just wash your underclothes
mm,
and you save all this water and money and time on all the washing you don't have to do. And you have these beautiful materials that you can wear for generations.
yeah,
And then another paprika girl who's also been on the show talking about how you can mend it. Like you were saying, you can use the material in different ways. You can change it out if part of it is ripped or broken.
mm,
So
and
it's so refreshing to meet people who are bringing these old, wonderful, sustainable ways, which are so stylish and high quality as well, and bringing that into a high quality modern life. I love that.
yeah, I think that's one thing that looks great. Great about what you do is you get to kind of meet all these people and have like really in depth kind of discussions with them and really understand what drives them and also what kind of inspires them. Yeah, but with specifically that as well, you know that's a good example of the kind of thing that a foreign company could take inspiration from for their own kind of sustainability initiatives at home. Yeah, so it's great. Yeah. Um, specifically, there's a little comment from Seiichiro Manabe. Often say that we need to know kind of about the market for the aging population, and Japan could be a great example. I think that's a really good point. Specifically, we've had interest in smart city projects. Well, for a number of reasons, but one part kind of when it comes to interest from the Japanese side is mobility is a really big focus when it comes to Japanese developers thinking about smart city projects and how to just improve the livability of cities, as we were saying earlier, livability. So, I mean, that's especially relevant when it comes to the aging population, when you're not as mobile and when maybe there aren't as many carers to help, because obviously with the Shoshikodeka, the low birth rate, aging population problem, a lack of kind of care workers is a really pressing problem. So yeah, kind of sort of yeah. I think Japanese companies are looking for inspiration from outside in order to kind of solve very Japanese problems. Mm, yeah, this is an example. I think in here there is.
Yeah, this is an interesting example you have on Tokyoesque about mobility. and using AI and developing that. And I'm starting to see this in Japan and different places. There's a new okonomiyaki shop open just opposite Miyajima Island, and they're using these food delivery robots,
Mm,
probably for a few reasons. They're probably having trouble finding enough staff, but using these robots just to deliver the food, even if the staff come and take the order, it takes off a lot of pressure of having to carry heavy things.
mhm.
So you could imagine how this would be very useful when we're talking about, in old folks' homes, or carrying heavy things and using robots for that to make sure the people working there don't strain themselves or get injured. So there's a lot of interesting innovation happening for sure.
Yeah, and of course it's not only elderly people who suffer with mobility issues. All sorts of people do. So it's honestly, I actually quite like that initiative for the way in which it could lead to kind of more jobs being accessible to people who struggle from mobility issues. So yeah.
And I think it's that we often in Japan, a lot of people are saying, oh, we have a graying population, we have an aging population problem. But it's not only Japan. This is happening all over the world. We have good medical systems, so we have people living longer, and we have a lot of great innovations in Japan that we can definitely export. But we also have fantastic ideas abroad that we should import,
Yeah.
and that's really where companies like yours really excel.
Mm, mm, thank you. Yeah, specifically, sorry, I just remembered a couple examples. But in terms of smart city initiatives, kind of helping the elderly, or again people with kind of general mobility issues, there have also been, I can't remember specifically which city it was. I believe it was in a rural area, in Tohoku, possibly. I could be wrong. But yeah, there's been an initiative essentially to kind of get self-driving taxis to help self-driving taxis, and then also kind of delivery robots to kind of pick up your order from the supermarket and take it to your door. But for older people who in rural areas, the like isolation is a really pressing problem. Obviously, not just in Japan. We see it absolutely everywhere with the aging population. Um, yeah, it really again increases the livability through giving people mobility. Um, so I think that's absolutely great, and that is something which people in the UK could look at and be like, look at what they're doing. Can we consider this? So if we can help convey that, that would be absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and it's there's a lot of high tech solutions for sure, for mobility and AI, but there's also a lot of great low tech innovation.
Mm,
I've seen more of I call them honesty shops in Japan. So I know that you have these in the UK as well. I've heard from friends there. So you have little roadside stands, and nobody is working there. You just have a few local vegetables or local goods people have made, and then you have a little container where you put the money after.
hmm
And there are, some of them have cameras, so people are more on their good behavior. But you're seeing more of this around Japan, and it's a nice way to give people somewhere local that they can go and get local products. Visitors can stop and support the local economy as well,
mm.
when there's not a lot of shops open. So it's very low tech, but it works really well in Japan. So it's nice to see.
Yeah, I mean, community building and making things better for people doesn't have to be high tech. Low tech solutions can be absolutely incredible as well, and I think that's great because it's a solution, from and by the community for the community. Yeah, and I think that's wonderful if that can pick up some more steam in Japan because we do see it in in the UK. Obviously, there are areas or there are parts where it could be a bit difficult to implement. But but yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah, nice. Well, I think we all feel disconnected, right, during COVID.
Mhm.
Like you were saying, you're doing most of your work online. I've spent the last 2 years doing most of my work online. So some of the low tech solutions are actually connecting us better to other people, and being out and about is now so refreshing and so nice. So it feels like we're kind of finding ways to connect again, and so it's great having technology and all these AI solutions, but it's also great just connecting with other people in a face-to-face way if we can do it safely, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's yeah, we're finding ways to connect again, but they're kind of different ways, or ways in which we've been considering would be nice, but we're just actually taking action on them. Is kind of how I feel about it. Like with the pedestrianization of cities, nothing really happened until there was a big shock that pushed it to happen. And now you see a lot of cities are just a lot more walkable, and just have a lot more people actually going through them, which I think is great. It's a shame it needed that kind of massive shock. It would be nice if instead of that, it could be more through kind of what we do, where we help like lift the curtain of maybe uncertainty, um, and help this kind of exchange of ideas, this global exchange of ideas. It'd be nice if people were to take kind of more inspiration from that rather than requiring a pandemic. But yeah, I think it's great. Hmm.
Yeah, lovely. Well, it's been a nice chat with you so far, Alex. We just have a few more minutes. Is there any trends that you're seeing for international businesses who are interested in Japan, or any trends that you think certain kinds of international businesses should think about moving into Japan? Like it's a good market for them?
Hmm. Um, I think so. Last year was fairly busy for us, particularly towards the end. So we are seeing a lot of kind of growing interest in the Japanese market, which I think is great because coming out of COVID, there's a lot of opportunity to be exploited. Um, and I think specifically from say the European side, Japan. I think well, I suppose it's kind of the sustainability angle again, which is great. But yeah, like we are seeing a lot of kind of cooperation between Japanese and European initiatives on like sustainable energy. Even like there was Marubeni Europower. They've opened up an office in Glasgow, and they're going to be working on one of the larger. I think it's the largest offshore wind farm in Europe. Um, um, but yeah, so I think very much, if kind of European companies um, are sort of, I don't know, if European companies, sorry, really try to kind of build on the current momentum of sustainability, they could really perform very well in the Japanese market. And then also there is obviously the massive like digitization wave, and the fintech wave as well. That's very much moving at quite speed. So honestly, there is a lot of opportunity out there. But yeah.
And then I think from the benefit to Japan perspective for international companies coming in, one of the things we haven't really talked about, which is a big hurdle for Japan, is the gender gap. And I think this is where a lot of the international companies coming in with higher gender and equality and diversity standards are really pulling up the standards overall in Japan. So that's really lovely to see. And I know that the fintech companies are really treating all staff more fairly. So that's really encouraging.
Mm, mm. Yeah, yeah. Specifically with the gender wage gap thing in particular, there have been some promising kind of movements in Japan. which I think is great. Kind of, a bit more of an uptake in people taking paternity leave to kind of, it's not just the wage gap, but also the household labor disparity. Yeah, so I think Japan's been doing well in terms of kind of speeding up and progress on that. But again, yeah, there's a lot more progress to be made. um, yeah,
Yeah.
so I really hope.
But it's really thanks to businesses like yours, which are helping the international companies understand the market in Japan and to connect and localize. I think is we need more businesses like yours who are kind of helping be the bridge on either side, right?
Yeah, thank you. I mean that's very much in line with our concept, just promoting globalization in a positive way. So yeah, if we can contribute to that, which we do, then I think we're very happy and we're rather fulfilling our purpose.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Alex. Thanks for joining and sharing some of the insights from Tokyoesque. Where's the best place to people to find out more about Tokyoesque?
So I'd always recommend following our LinkedIn, which is just simply Tokyoesque on LinkedIn.com. .com. Then of course there is Tokyoesque.com. Um, I was wondering if I could pop that in the chat there, but no worries. But yeah, I can.
I'll put the link below as well. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Yeah,
And it
that
looks like
website.
we've had a few people from LinkedIn today
Hmm.
joining us. Thanks, Miles. Miles says, very interesting episode. Working to launch my startup there in Japan in 2023, hoping to bring our platform for doing good there and make a real contribution in resilience and social impact in Japan. That's awesome, Miles. Great to hear. And with so many great comments, can you read his name in kanji?
Seiichiro Manabe.
Oh, very good. Yeah, thank you so much for your comments. Great comments as we're going. Louise Poppy has joined from YouTube. Thanks, Louise. And Ravi Kumar from LinkedIn as well. Great to have all of you today as we're live. Wonderful. Thank you again so much, Alex. And please say hello to Natalie and all the good people that you work with.
Absolutely. Ooh, last little plug, if you don't mind. If
Of course.
anyone watching would like to sign up to our newsletter, we put out kind of monthly insights, monthly updates on the Japanese market. And yeah, you can keep up to date. If you'd like to follow that, please just go to our contact page on Tokyoesque.com. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Alex. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night and enjoy the end of your first week of 2023 and see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.